Something happened last night. Not in your waking world. Not in a text, not in a phone call, not in any place you could witness. It happened in the only space where love cannot be censored, where walls do not exist, and where the truth of what someone feels for you is exposed completely without permission. Last night, while the world was quiet and his defenses were asleep, someone dreamed about you. And that dream was not random. It was not meaningless noise generated by a tired brain. It was the most honest confession their soul has ever made about you. And you need to hear what that means, because it changes everything. Dreams do not negotiate. Dreams do not perform. Dreams do not protect the ego or respect the carefully constructed stories we tell ourselves about what we feel and do not feel. And in that unguarded space, in the deep hours when his conscious mind finally released its grip, you were the only thing that mattered. This message reached you at this exact moment because something is shifting in the invisible world between you and this person. Not tomorrow, not eventually, right now, as you listen to these words. And the dream he had about you is the clearest evidence that what lives between you is far deeper, far more persistent, and far more alive than anything his waking behavior has shown you. You have been reading his silence as an answer, but his unconscious just gave a completely different one. Now, I need to share something with you today that most people never learn about dreams, about the unconscious mind, and about what it truly means when someone appears in another person's sleep with a vividness that startles them awake at 3 a.m. with a feeling in their chest they cannot name. What I am about to explain will permanently change how you understand silence, distance, and everything that has confused you about this connection. But before I get there is something you need to hear first. Something about what has been happening inside you that is directly linked to what happened inside him last night. If this message resonates with the quiet knowing you have been carrying, if the timing of finding this feels less like coincidence and more like alignment, stay close. The messages that continue to arrive in this space are already being prepared for you, and they carry the kind of clarity that shifts everything forward. You have been feeling something lately, not loud, not dramatic, more like a low hum beneath your sternum that appeared weeks ago and has refused to stop. You wake in the morning and your first thought is not about your schedule or your plans. It is about him, about a specific moment, about the weight of a feeling that will not dissolve no matter how many reasonable arguments you stack against it. You have told yourself to move on. You have told yourself the silence is your answer. You have told yourself that if he wanted to, he would have by now. And yet something inside you, something quieter than your thoughts but louder than your fear, will not agree. Something deeper than logic, deeper than pride, deeper than every defense you have built around your own heart, keeps insisting that this is not over, that the story between you and this person still has pages that have not been written, that the stillness you are sitting inside is not an ending. It is a held breath. I need you to know that what you have been sensing is not delusion. It is not wishful thinking. It is not your heart deceiving you into holding on to something that already left. What you are sensing is the exact same frequency that caused him to dream about you last night, because the connection between you does not operate on the level of text messages and returned phone calls and visible gestures. It operates on a level that Carl Jung spent his entire career trying to understand, the level of the unconscious, where the real negotiations of love happen in total silence, invisible to both of you, but powerful enough to cross into sleep and announce itself in a dream that he did not choose to have and could not have prevented. Let me explain what happened inside his mind while he was sleeping, because this is where everything changes. And this is where most people misunderstand what dreaming actually means. Jung did not treat dreams the way the modern world does. He did not see them as random fragments recycled from a busy day. He did not dismiss them as neurological noise to be forgotten by breakfast. Jung understood something radical, something that the psychological mainstream took decades to even begin appreciating, that the unconscious mind is not chaotic. It is purposeful. It moves with direction. It carries an intelligence that the conscious mind often lacks. And when someone appears in your dream with vivid emotional charge, with a presence so real it lingers after waking, it is because the unconscious has identified that person as essential to the dreamer's psychological evolution. Not optional, not casual, not replaceable, essential. The unconscious does not waste its most powerful imagery on people who do not matter. It reserves that kind of visitation for the ones who have entered so deep into the dreamer's inner world that they have become part of the architecture itself. When you feel ready, type the words, "His dream speaks truth," in the comments as a way to honor the honesty his unconscious just offered you, even while his waking mind is still too afraid to say it out loud. But here is where I need to tell you something that changes the entire picture. And this is the part most dream psychology content will never explain, because it requires understanding Jung at a level that goes far beyond surface interpretation. Jung described something called the prospective function of dreams. Most people assume that dreams look backward, that they recycle memories, replay old conversations, process yesterday's events. And some dreams do that. But the dreams that matter, the ones that wake you up, the ones that carry emotional weight that survives the morning, those dreams are not looking backward. They are looking forward. The prospective function means that the dream is anticipating where the psyche is heading. It is preparing the dreamer for a psychological development that has not yet reached consciousness. When this man dreamed about you last night, his unconscious was not replaying old footage. It was showing him the future his conscious mind is still too afraid to accept. His dream about you was not a backward glance. It was a forward pull. His own soul is rehearsing something that his ego has not yet agreed to. Think of it this way. Imagine there is a locked diary inside his chest, thick with pages, and he has spent months, perhaps years, refusing to open it. He has stacked furniture against the door. He has changed the lock. He has told himself the diary does not matter, that whatever was written there has already expired. But at night, when sleep dissolves the furniture of his defenses, the diary falls open on its own, and your name is written on every single page, not because he chose to write it there, because the unconscious does not request permission. It inscribes what is true, and you are the truth he has been avoiding in daylight that ambushes him in the dark. Now, before I tell you what this dream is going to cause inside him over the coming days and weeks, you need to understand why his waking behavior has been so contradictory. Because the confusion you have felt, the mixed signals, the closeness followed by sudden retreat, the warmth that appears for a breath and then vanishes, all of it has a single explanation. And it is not that he does not care. It is not that his feelings were never real. It is that he is living in a war between two layers of himself that are pulling in opposite directions with equal force. On the surface, where his ego operates, he has constructed a story about who he is, what he can handle, what he deserves, and what is emotionally safe. That story was written long before he ever met you. It was written by old wounds, by past disappointments, by moments where he opened himself completely and was met with something that taught him closing was the only way to survive. His ego story says clearly, do not get close again, do not need someone this deeply, do not allow her to see how far this reaches inside you. But beneath that surface, in the layer where his unconscious lives without apology, there is a completely different truth operating. And that truth has your face, your energy, your specific presence that no other person on earth replicates. That truth knows you are not a danger. You are the answer to a question he has been carrying since before he could articulate what was missing. I know what part of you is thinking right now. It is the part that has been hurt before, the part that has learned to protect itself by expecting less. And that part wants to say, maybe the dream did not mean anything. Maybe he dreamed about someone else too. Maybe I am making this bigger than it is. I hear that voice inside you, and I understand why it speaks. It has been your shield. But I need you to consider something. If this connection meant nothing, you would not be here. If his energy had truly left your field, you would have scrolled past this without a second glance. The fact that you stopped, that something in these words made your chest tighten with recognition, is itself a form of evidence. Your body knows what your doubts are trying to overwrite. And I want to tell you something about what has been happening to him that he will probably never describe to anyone. There are moments during his day, ordinary, unremarkable moments, when you arrive inside his mind without invitation. He could be driving. He could be standing in line for coffee. He could be in a meeting, surrounded by voices discussing things that should matter. And suddenly you are there. Not as a thought he chose, as a sensation that takes over the room inside his head. He feels the specific texture of what it was like to be near you. He hears the cadence of your laugh, not the sound exactly, but the feeling it left inside his ribs, and he has to physically redirect himself like pulling a car back from the edge of a lane. That is not casual memory. That is the unconscious breaking through the surface during daylight hours, reminding him that the dream was not an isolated event. It is the nighttime version of what is happening to him constantly. Jung wrote about interpreting dreams on the objective level, meaning the figure in the dream is not a symbol standing in for something abstract inside the dreamer. The dream is about the actual person. When he dreams about you on the objective level, his unconscious is not borrowing your image as a metaphor for some unmet need. It is addressing you, specifically, as a real, irreplaceable force in his psychological life. You are not a symbol in his dream. You are the subject of it. And that distinction matters profoundly, because it means his unconscious has classified you as singular, not interchangeable with anyone else, not a projection of generic longing. You, the specific, unrepeatable reality of who you are. If that lands somewhere deep inside you, type, "I visited his sleep" in the comments, not as a claim of power, as an acknowledgement of a connection that operates beyond waking hours and beyond his ability to control. So here is the complication, and I share this with you not to create doubt, but to help you see the full topography of what is happening beneath the surface. His dream about you last night created a disturbance inside him, not a gentle ripple. Think of sonar, a powerful pulse sent into deep water that returns carrying the exact shape of what lies below the surface. His dream was that sonar pulse, and what it returned was the full, unedited shape of what he feels for you. The problem is, that shape turned out to be enormous, far larger than what his waking mind had estimated. He went to sleep believing he had moved past this, or at minimum, that he had contained whatever lingered. And his dream showed him that nothing has been contained, that you are not fading inside him. You are intensifying. And for a man whose primary survival mechanism has been control of his emotions, control of the narrative, control of how much anyone is allowed to matter, that revelation is terrifying. You may observe something in the days ahead that could confuse you if you do not understand what is driving it. He may become even quieter than before. He may seem more closed. He may send a message so minimal it stings. And if that happens, I need you to understand what it actually means. It means the dream worked. It means his defenses registered the breach and activated every protocol he has. It means his ego felt the diary fall open and is scrambling to stack the furniture back against the door. The increased distance you might see is not a step away from you. It is a direct reaction to being pulled closer to you in the one place he cannot defend. Jung understood that the psyche carries what he called a teleological impulse, a drive not just to survive but to become whole, to integrate what has been separated, to move toward the self, which is the deepest and most complete center of who a person truly is. And when someone becomes essential to that movement, when their presence activates something the psyche needs in order to complete itself, the unconscious will not release them simply because the ego finds it uncomfortable. His unconscious has identified you as part of his path toward wholeness. That is why you keep surfacing in his dreams. That is why his thoughts orbit back to you even when he redirects them. That is why a particular song, a familiar street, a scent that carries your frequency can resurrect your presence inside him without any warning. You are woven into his becoming, and the unconscious does not surrender what it requires. When you feel ready, type "the unconscious remembers" in the comments as a declaration of what you have always sensed was true beneath all his silence and distance. If you have stayed with me this far, what comes next is the part that was specifically meant for you to hear. Do not leave before you receive it. There is something else happening inside him that most people would not recognize unless they understood the landscape of masculine psychology at a depth that goes beyond surface behavior. When a man dreams about a woman with the kind of intensity that survives waking, when her presence in sleep is more vivid than his reality during the day, it activates something Jung would have recognized as the anima stirring at the deepest level, not the idealized fantasy of a woman, the actual living encounter with the feminine force that has the power to transform everything he thought he knew about himself. You are not just someone he has feelings for. You have become the living mirror of the part of himself he has never had the courage to face. The tender part, the vulnerable part, the part that knows love is not weakness, but the most demanding form of strength a man can be asked to practice. And his dream placed that mirror directly in front of him, with no walls, no performance, no exit. Just you, standing in the honest space of his unconscious, reflecting back the man he is becoming, whether he is ready for it or not. This is why the dream shook him. Not because it reminded him of what he lost, because it showed him what he is becoming if he lets himself walk through the door his own soul keeps opening. Now let me tell you something that you have probably been afraid to believe. Every dream he has had about you, and this was not the first, even if he has never spoken about the others, has been moving him closer to a threshold, not a wall, not a dead end, a threshold, a place where the distance between what he feels in the hidden world and what he is willing to express in the visible one becomes too narrow to sustain. Because that is precisely what the prospective function does. It does not punish the dreamer with longing that leads nowhere. It prepares the dreamer for what is coming. Each dream about you has softened another degree of internal resistance, loosened another thread of the old protective story, brought him one step closer to the moment where pretending becomes more exhausting than honesty. He is being moved, not by your effort, not by circumstances outside him, by something inside his own depths that is wiser than his fear and infinitely more patient than his pride. And you have sensed this movement. You may not have had a name for it, but you have noticed moments where the energy between you shifted without either of you doing anything visible. A day when warmth radiated from his direction, even though no words were exchanged. A night when the weight in your chest lightened inexplicably, as though something invisible and heavy had been temporarily redistributed. That was not imagination. That was the unconscious channel between you two transmitting what his daylight self refuses to articulate. Type "dreams do not lie" in the comments to anchor your trust in what his unconscious has already confirmed about you. I want to pause here and speak to something you may be carrying that you have not told anyone. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from loving someone whose actions do not match the energy you feel from them. It is not the exhaustion of giving too much. It is the exhaustion of translating, of constantly trying to reconcile what your intuition knows with what his behavior shows. You sit across from friends and they offer logical advice. He is not interested, move on, you deserve better, and their words make sense to your mind. But something in your body refuses to accept the verdict. There is a knowing in your bones that does not speak in logic. It speaks in warmth, in recognition, in the way your nervous system still responds to his name, even when you have spent weeks training yourself not to care. That knowing is not broken. That knowing is connected to the same unconscious field his dream emerged from last night. Your intuition has been receiving transmissions his mouth refuses to send, and the dream is confirmation that the signal was always real. Most people leave this message at this point. They take the comfort and close the page. But if you are still here, what comes next carries the full weight of everything I have been building toward, and it is the part you need most. Here is what I want you to carry forward from today. His dream about you was not an accident. It was an announcement, issued not by his ego, but by the layer of him that keeps the unedited record of everything he truly feels. And that record is clear. You are not fading from his inner world. You are not dissolving with time. You are not a passing thought that will evaporate with enough distance and enough silence. You are a permanent inscription in the deepest ledger of his emotional life. And every defense he builds during the day, every wall, every performance of indifference, is dismantled at night by a mind that refuses to falsify its own records. Now, I want to take you somewhere for a moment. Let yourself settle into what I am about to describe. Not as fantasy, as the trajectory that his own unconscious is building toward with every dream it sends, night after night, with increasing clarity and urgency. There is a version of a day that is approaching. A day where the threshold finally meets his feet and he cannot step around it any longer. He reaches out to you, not with the careful, measured language he has used before when he was still managing the distance, with something unpolished, something that carries a slight tremor at its edges, because it has been locked inside that diary for so long that releasing it feels like remembering how to breathe after holding his breath for a lifetime. He tells you he tried. He tried to maintain the separation. He tried to convince himself the intensity would fade. He tried to wait it out. And then he dreamed about you again. And the dream did what every dream about you has always done. It demolished the story his ego was telling and replaced it with the only truth that remains when everything else is stripped away. And in that conversation, in that moment, you will feel something settle. Not just between you and him, inside your own body. A deep, ancient exhale that rises from the center of your being and says, I knew. I always knew. And I was right to trust what I felt when nothing around me confirmed it. That moment is not fantasy. It is the destination of a process that is already actively in motion inside him tonight, as he lies in the dark and the quiet, wondering why your presence absolutely will not leave his sleep. And here is something important that I do not want you to miss. The dream he had about you did not just affect him. It sent something outward. Think of it as a pulse that travels through the invisible thread that has always connected you, even during the months when neither of you acknowledged it existed. You may have felt it. Maybe you woke up last night or the night before with a sudden warmth, a sudden clarity, a sudden peace you could not explain. Maybe you had a dream of your own. Not necessarily about him, but about walking through an open door, about standing in light, about arriving somewhere that felt like it had been waiting for you. If that happened, it was not coincidence. It was resonance. Two unconscious minds, connected at a depth that neither of your conscious personalities fully understands, speaking to each other in the only language that requires no words. Between now and the moment everything surfaces, your role is not to pursue, not to convince, not to decode his every action for hidden signals. Your role is to remain grounded in the knowing that brought you to this message in the first place. A connection that invades someone's dreams is not casual. A presence that survives every attempt at suppression is not temporary. A love that the unconscious refuses to release, no matter how firmly the ego insists, is not something that quietly fades into nothing. You do not need to do anything except continue being exactly who you are, the woman who trusts what she feels even when the visible world offers no confirmation, the woman who stayed when every reasonable voice told her to leave, the woman whose patience is not passivity. It is the most powerful form of faith a heart can practice. If what you heard today reached a place inside you that has been waiting for someone to understand it, share this message with another woman carrying a quiet knowing she has been afraid to voice. When you share, you become a bridge carrying clarity to someone who is sitting in that same silence right now. And to keep receiving messages that arrive precisely when you need them, stay close to this space. What comes next holds something you have been silently asking about, and it is almost ready. Type, I trust what his soul reveals as a statement of faith in the process that is unfolding beneath everything you can see. Type, I honor the message, to acknowledge that what arrived in his dream was not noise. It was the clearest truth his soul has spoken in years. And before you go, type, Our dreams are converging to honor the invisible space where your souls have already been meeting long before either of you found the courage to meet in the waking world. You were dreamed about. You were remembered in the deepest place a person can remember. And the love that lives there is already finding its way home.